So, okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and jump right in. I'll share my screen. And needless to say, as with all of these Zooms that we've been doing in the past, the more participation that we get from you, the much better these sessions tend to be. Which by the way, we will be out of here at 1 o'clock sharp, possibly earlier, depending upon you guys, but I like to respect your time, so I won't go over 1 o'clock for those of you that have additional appointments. So, but let's please participate and it'll tend to make these things a lot more interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. And by the way, this is a brand new presentation. I might have a couple of slides out of order a little bit, so I apologize if it looks like I might skip around because I just changed this within the last few hours and it's not exactly the way I want it. So I may skip around. So we're going to give you a fire hose of information here today, guys. I mean, I'm going to just blast you with content. Hopefully there'll be one or two or more things in here that you'll find valuable, and then you can take them and run with them. If anybody wants to talk more offline, shoot me a text, call me, email me afterward and say, Lance, could you maybe go a little bit more on that? I didn't understand what you were doing with that. I'd be happy to chat with you at all. But this is truly going to be the 30,000-foot overview. I'm going to do very little deep diving into a whole heck of a lot of detail, unless you guys just stop me and say, wait a minute, what was that? Give us a little bit more information. So we're just going to blast you with just a ton of stuff, and then we'll just kind of see how we'll see how this thing goes. So this is a quote from Tom Ferry, which, as far as I know, he posted this or said this on December 21st of 2018, and you can read the quote for the first time in almost 10 years. Your skills will actually matter. So I can't exactly remember what was going on in December of 2018, but something must have triggered with Tom that said, things are different now and you better have some skills or you're going to be in trouble. I would think that in the COVID era, and by the way, there's going to be some slides in here that are specific to kind of COVID and what we're dealing with. But this presentation is not tailored to COVID. So there may be some things that we're talking about that you're like, wait a minute, Lance, we can't do that right now. I understand that. I mean, you guys are going to have to apply some common sense here. So if we talk about some things that worked maybe 6 months ago or a year ago that we can't do today, I'm going to assume that you guys know that, and you'll say, well, maybe I might be able to do something like that next year when things loosen up and we get back to normal. But to Tom's point, when I saw Tom's quote a year, 2 years ago almost, I thought, wow, that's a pretty interesting quote. I totally agree with that. And again, I don't remember what was going on, but I think we all could sit back today and say, wow, I don't know if it's for the last 10 years, but you better have some skills in this marketplace, irrespective of how good things are. Before we kicked off the call, Nick and I were chatting a little bit about how blessed we are in the real estate industry, because our business is a business, and there's a few of them out there. I mean, if you're Amazon or Costco or some individual businesses and industries that have excelled during the last 7 months with COVID and the lockdowns and the quarantines, you're blessed. And we just so happen to be one of those businesses. I'm still not exactly sure why, but we are definitely blessed. Having said that, I'm assuming there's still a lot of you out there that very well may be struggling. Let's face it, listed inventory is hard to come by. So bottom line, skills matter. Skills absolutely matter. So hopefully I'll give you guys something today that you'll be able to take away from this and add to your toolbox, and it'll get you going. So, and by the way, everything I'm doing here is all R&D. It's all been ripped off. It's all been duplicated. I don't have been doing this 34 years. And what I was trained on was stolen from somebody else. And what I'm going to train you on today, for the most part, is stolen from somebody else. However, even though I'm kind of broker owner, and actually I'm not even broker of the office anymore, Drew and Drake are the broker of the office, but I'm an active agent. I've personally sold thousands of homes. I still sell houses today. I have clients that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. We don't just do management and recruiting. So and by the way, I was a huge farmer. And so I love this topic and I absolutely believe in it, but we have to be different. You have to be that purple cow. You have to be able to stand out. If you are not, especially in a farm, and by the way, just for clarity, I'm gonna drill down on farming. Farming is not going through a neighborhood and dropping a flyer once. Farming is not going through a neighborhood and knocking on a door once. Farming is not going through a list and making one call. That's just shotgun prospecting or whatever you want to call it. My definition of farming is going to be pretty clear. We're going to pick a very specific, and by the way, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but we're going to take a very specific group of prospects, and we are going to work that group of prospects consistently with a plan and forever. Okay. So this is not just a shotgun approach. Oh, I think I'll jump in for 3 months and see what happens. I think I'll try this area for 6 months and see what happens. If that's the approach that you're going to take with this, I would suggest you probably should take a different approach or try something different. But we do have to be different. We do have to be that purple cow. We have to set ourselves apart. We need to differentiate ourselves. We need to be the gold egg. We need to be the red apple amongst the green apples. We need to be the sharp pencil, whatever it happens to be. And hopefully I'll give you a little bit of a chance to do that. So this is just my standard kind of, let's address the elephant in the room here with COVID and what's going on. We do have a little bit of a new norm. Matter of fact, when I created this slide for a totally different presentation, the concept was, for my agent specifically, guys, we're going to have to do things a little bit differently. We're going to have to adopt to showing properties. We're going to have to adopt to using a PED. We're going to have to adopt to a listing presentation that's a little bit different. And we kind of came up with this new normal. I will tell you, and by the way, please interrupt or raise your hands if you feel differently. It is amazing how rapidly we as an industry have adapted to COVID. I mean, we were spending hours and hours and days and weeks discussing how are we going to show properties and how are we going to do a listing presentation and how are we going to have people come into the office. And I got to tell you, at least in my office, we don't talk about that stuff anymore. We've got it figured out. We're showing properties. We're doing listing presentations. We're closing escrows. We're getting loan documents signed, right? So we kind of went from maybe a little bit of a crisis mode back in late March and early April to now it's like, all right, this is just how we do it. So at any rate, like I said a minute ago, if we get into some stuff that's maybe a little outside of what, hey, we can't do that today, let's just understand that, okay, you guys use some common sense here. Obviously, we have the stay-at-home owners and the rules that we're dealing with. We're not going to deal with that. This is a slide that, again, I use in a different presentation. I absolutely believe this, though. So this will be kind of like my last acknowledgement of kind of our new normal with COVID. I believe the way we conduct business from this point forward will never be the same. Okay. It's never going to be the same. And the analogy I'm going to use, and I can't really see everybody that's on the call, but I'm assuming we've got some old timers in here that maybe have done this as long as I have, or at least maybe for 10 or 15 or 20 years. In the same way that the REO world changed how we operate, which by the way, for the worse, I believe that our current situation with COVID will change the way we operate and interact with our customers, and for that matter, our farm, but I do think it's going to be for the better. Just a quick example on the REO stuff, for those of you that were doing REOs back in the 90s or in the 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, things change. We used to sit down with our buyers and sellers, or at least sit down with the buyer's agent and the listing agent and the seller and do face-to-face presentations of offers. That was better, in my opinion. We don't have done that. We haven't done that. And the reason we don't do that anymore, because the REO world changed that. The situation we have in COVID is going to change the way not only I believe you're going to interact with your buyers and sellers, but it's also going to interact the way we as broker owners and managers interact with our agents. It's going to change the way our offices look. It's going to change the way our spaces look. And ultimately, I think in this particular case, it's going to be for the better. So some of those changes, I think we all need to just acknowledge and just react to. Okay, so let's start jumping into the actual farm portion. Okay. All right, crossing your fingers and hoping I'm going to have a successful farm. That is not a plan. That's not what we're going to be doing here. That's not what I suggest you do. So my goal today is just basically kind of get you guys pointed in hopefully the right direction, and get a plan for your farm, which, by the way, and I know this is hard, so I'm not going to wait for anybody to respond, but if you are currently farming or you have a farm or you've been farming for an extended period of time, if you wouldn't mind maybe just typing that in the chat box so I kind of know, is anybody in here farming? And yeah, I'll get you my contact information. Oh, so it looks like Nick already did it. That's my email. So if you are farming, or if you want to unmute yourself and say, yeah, this is what I've been doing, we'll take just a 30 seconds so I can kind of see what I'm dealing with, because it is a little different, because it looks like we've got 33 people here on the call. If none of you have ever farmed before, I probably should do a little bit different presentation. I'm assuming that some of you have done a little bit of farming, or at least have a general idea of the concept. But my goal today is basically to get you a plan to work your farm, and then hopefully give you some inspiration to actually work it. I will tell you this: if you're not committed to the process of farming, don't even start. Okay, do not even start your farm, or at any type, unless you're willing to commit to it, because it will ultimately, it is a waste of time. Okay, and I'm going to be pretty blunt, and I hope I don't offend any of my agents, or frankly other agents that may be on the call right now. I don't know very many agents that really farm. I really don't. As a matter of fact, if I'm being honest, I know almost everybody. Okay, and I don't mean just in I mean in the Inland Valleys Association of Realtors. I know everybody. Okay, and I certainly know the agents that are doing business. I can count maybe on two hands the agents that I actually know that farm, that truly farm. Okay, so if you're not willing to commit to it, don't do it at all, because it's just ultimately going to just be a waste of your time, and for that matter, it's going to be a waste of your money. And of course, time is money. So real quick, I'm gonna check the chat box. Oh, brand new. Okay, Amber, great. New. I've started farm. Okay, so you're 2 months into the business. You've already started a farmer community. Perfect. Okay, I'm not. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this is the deal. I'm gonna, since you're the only person who has typed in the chat box, I'm gonna assume you are my only audience today, Amber. So I'm going to be talking to Amber and Amber alone. And having said that, it kind of ties into what I want to do a little bit anyway, because you're brand new, you just started a farm. Hopefully you've everything that we go through in the next 45, 50 minutes, you will have said, oh yeah, I've done that, I did that. And you can check all the boxes. I have a feeling I might suggest a few things that you're like, oh crap, I didn't do that. Oh, maybe I need to start over. So it's entirely possible, Amber, by the end of this session today, the farm that you've been working on for the last 2 months, you may scrap that farm, ditch it completely, and you may start over, which, by the way, only being 2 months in, that's not a problem. Okay, that's not a problem. Okay, so don't start unless you're willing to do it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit generally about what we're talking. Okay, for today's purposes, I'm going to assume that we're doing a physical geographic farm, the old school farm. I'm picking out a neighborhood of houses. It's 100, it's 200, it's 500, and I'm going to focus on those particular homes. All right, very traditional farm. But a farm doesn't have to be that. For example, I farm, as a matter of fact, later on, I'm going to show you one of my farms. It is not, I'm not farming houses. I'm farming real estate agents. Okay. And my whole purpose for my particular farm is to contact realtors to come work at Coldwell Banker Town and Country, in the same way that Nick is targeting agents to go to Coastal Alliance, and the folks at Associated Brokerages are targeting agents to come there. We are farming, except we're just farming in a different category. All right. So I'm assuming most of our audience today here are agents that are selling residential real estate. So we are, for the purposes of today, our discussion is going to revolve around a geographic farm of homes. However, everything we're going to do, you can apply to almost everything that you could potentially think of. You could have an email farm. You could have a texting farm. You could have a phone call farm. You could have a postcard farm. And all of the same rules apply, but you're just going to need to tweak them a little bit. For example, and if anybody wants, actually, Amber, let me put you on the spot since you're the only one who volunteered. You can either unmute yourself or just type it into the chat box. The new farm that you just created a couple months ago, how many houses are you farming?
There are, I'm trying to remember now, 300?
300. Okay, well, good. Number one, I think 300 is probably, 200. What's that?
200, sorry.
200, okay. Well, first of all, okay, I'm gonna, can I beat you up just a little bit?
Yeah.
Will you let me do that? Okay. If you're farming, and I ask you how many houses you're farming, the number needs to be there. I am farming 272 homes. Okay. You need to know, because if you're truly farming, then you know exactly. And this is where they are. It's 272. When was the last time you were out there? I was out there yesterday. When was the last mailing piece you did? That was 2 weeks ago. When's the next event you're going to do? That's scheduled for November 10th. So all of those things need to be planned. Okay. So now that I've beaten you up a little bit, let me give you some love. That's probably a pretty good number of homes. Okay. Occasionally I'll have agents that say, I have 2,000 homes in my farm. Okay. So my question to them is, okay, so you're obviously not walking the farm. Forget about COVID right now. Okay. You're obviously not personally reaching out to those people every 30 days, because quite honestly, it's not possible. It's not possible to reach 2,000 people on a monthly basis. So that doesn't mean it's a bad farm. It just means it's a different farm. So if I have 2,000, or quite honestly, let's say 22,000, I have 22,000 people on my farm. Okay, so we're not talking a geographic farm of homes that you're physically going to go into every day. If you have 22,000 people in your farm, you're obviously doing emails, or you're doing text blasts, or you're doing direct mail, which, by the way, super, super effective direct mail, but very expensive. You guys can do the math really quick. Wait a minute, Lance, 22,000 homes at 50 cents a piece. That's $11,000 to send out a postcard. Correct. And there are agents, by the way, that are doing that, and they're doing it very effectively. So again, for our purposes, whether it's a postcard farm, whether it's an email farm, a text farm, whether you're recruiting agents or you're recruiting people to your team, or whether it's a buyer farm, which, by the way, most people don't think of this as I'm going to have a farm for buyers. But you can just as easily apply every single situation that we're going to talk about today to a buyer farm. You're going to farm tenants. Okay, I'm going to go to a specific apartment complex, or I'm going to go to a group of targeted prospects that I believe are going to become buyers, and I'm going to farm them. That is not traditionally what people think about when they think about farming, but you certainly can do that. So congratulations. So the next time I see you, Amber, tell me exactly how many people are in your farm, and I want to know their first name, last name. I want to know the name of their dog, their cat, when their kids are next soccer game is, and what the name of their grandparents are. Okay. And I'm only half kidding about that, because as you start to develop, if you are truly farming a neighborhood, okay, you will, over time, you will know that the people that your prospects are, you'll know that their kid's name is Johnny and he plays soccer. As weird as that sounds, you will know that. Okay. And you will need to document that. And that ultimately, if you do it properly, not weird, but if you do it properly, knowing that Mr. and Mrs. Smith at 123 Main Street have two kids, and one of them's name is Johnny and he plays soccer, will earn you business. Okay, done properly. Okay, so we're going to continue on, but again, for today's purposes, we're just going to talk residential neighborhood, Amber's farm. Amber's 272 houses at whatever city Amber happens to be. Okay, so Amber, and again, you don't have to answer this. I don't want to role play with you or make you nervous unless you want to role play with me. So if you do, unmute yourself and we can talk. Otherwise, sit back and be comfortable. So before you pick your farm, I hope that you did a good job researching the competition in your farm. And what I mean by that is, are there any other agents in your group of 200 or 300 houses that are currently working and or farming that? The good news for pretty much everybody on this call is the answer is going to be no. Okay, so you can pretty much go through darn near any single neighborhood, and very quickly you can determine nobody is farming this. Now, and again, I'm way oversimplifying this, but actually, Amber, you're unmuted, so let me do what I said I was going to do. You go first, and then Daniel, you're on deck. Go ahead, Amber. Did you have something to say?
Oh, I was going to say that the farm that I'm in, the top producer is probably approaching 70-ish years old, and she actually sold us our home that we're in.
Okay.
And she's speaking about retirement, so
Okay, so that agent
my
is
time.
circling the drain.
Yeah.
So you are, I love it. I love it. Well, okay, and all kidding aside, I don't know whether this was by design or by accident, But if there is an agent that is farming an area who is maybe looks like they might be getting a little closer to retirement, wow, what a great opportunity, especially if they dominated it. But let me give you a suggestion. So you know this agent, they sold you the house. Well,
Yeah.
this is the deal. Well, and by the way, they're probably not happy with you right now. By the way, are they in the same office as you or a different office or?
She's with Windermere.
Okay, so with Windermere, you're a CB. She just sold you a house. All of a sudden, Amber's putting stuff into her farm, her client. She's probably pissed. All right, how dare you? Okay, but let me give you a suggestion, and this is probably pretty obvious. She needs to be your best friend. You need to reach out to her, which is going to be a little tough in the beginning, but you need to basically approach it and somehow have the conversation that says, "Hey, um, are you planning on dying anytime soon? Because I would really like to take over your farm and I'd love to do it with some cooperation." Now, all kidding aside, I would start having a conversation about buying her farm. I want to buy her farm. Okay. Work out a referral agreement, whatever it happens to be. But but beautiful, beautiful. Now, having said that, let's face it. There's a lot of 70-year-old real estate agents. My mom and dad, for example, my dad's licensed. He's 80. He still sells, so he's not going to retire. So this lady may not be as close to retirement as you might think. So let me just leave that aside for just a second. Put a little cap on that, and then I'll get to Daniel, who's also unmuted. So if you are in a farm where you see someone is dominant, it's okay to jump into that farm. However, it's going to be a lot more difficult. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just going to be a lot more difficult. All right, especially if they're good. All right. So just know that. Now, if you don't care, you want to go head to head, and you're the new kid on the block, and you're going to knock them out. So be it. Go ahead and knock them out. But you are going to be looking at a little bit more of a challenging time. Daniel, I see I talked too long, so you took yourself off of mute. Did you want to jump back in? So,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there or anything. I was just listening in. I didn't have anything per se right now.
oh, I got you. Okay, the accidental unmute. I do it all the time. And sometimes that's extremely dangerous. So, okay, but all right, excellent. So, bottom line, we need to know our competition. So, I don't want you to go into a farm and by accident realize that Sally Smith has been dominant on the farm. She has a 60% market share. She lists and sells everything, and it's just going to be that much more difficult for you to break in. The reality is, it's not necessary. It's just not necessary to do that. I'm reading a note from Lonnie. I farmed when I started and I stopped after 2 years, but I'm going back now. Okay, so we might jump back to you a little bit, Lonnie, as far as why you stopped, how long it's been, what you were doing during those 2 years, and whether or not it's a good idea to jump back into that same farm. It very well may be. Okay, so we got to know our competition. You must know your competition. You have to know everything about them and strengths, weaknesses, are they getting ready to retire, et cetera, et cetera. Now, are you competitive? I would suggest the more competitive you are, the more successful you will be in this business, period. All right. But you certainly, I know it helped me tremendously within my farm because I'm extremely competitive person. And I did the thought of losing a listing or a sale to another agent in my farm was just devastating. It just absolutely just tore me up when I was farming. I was doing an agent. I was extremely competitive, and I just wanted to make it so that that would never happen. But the bottom line, know your competition. It is super, super critical. Okay, again, since Amber and I seem to be hitting it off here, I hope that you chose your farm very carefully. It is critical that you choose your farm carefully. We don't just choose a farm because, oh, these are pretty houses, or I like the neighborhood, or this is where I take a jog every week, or, oh, these are expensive houses. All of those reasons are not valid reasons to choose a farm. Okay. You need to do some research. And I'll give you an example. I live in Canyon Crest in Riverside. Okay. And by the way, I'm going to mention some agents by name. I love them. So, hopefully if this ever gets back to them, they'll look at all of this as a compliment. But many of you may know Donna and Charlie Bowling. Okay. They work at, what are they? Realty Executives in Riverside. They've been doing this for as long as I have, which is 30 plus years. They have farmed Canyon Crest consistently for at least 25 years. I know because I live there and I get their stuff. Okay. And now the good news for, again, if I was to give a little bit of love to Donna and Charlie, is they're one of those 10 people that I said farm. Having said that, they've never once knocked on my door, ever. Okay. So again, for me, that's, wait a minute, you're not walking your farm. I like to walk the farms. I think you guys need to get in your farm. You need to be visible. That's, people need to see you periodically, whether that's once a month or once a quarter. But they have a mail farm. They have a direct mail farm. And I have received a mailing piece from them every 3 months for 25 years. And if I was not a real estate agent, hands down, I don't know if I'd list my house with them, but they certainly would get, they would get on a listing appointment with me. And then it would be, I would be the listing that would be up to them whether they got me or they lost me. But they absolutely would get an appointment with me if for no other reason I've received a piece of mail from them every quarter for 25 years. Okay. They are truly farming. So give them a huge plus. I mean, they're top 1% as far as agents that farm. But let me now possibly make a suggestion where I think they might have made a mistake over the last 25 years. I don't think they chose their farm very carefully. Okay. And the reason why is the turnover in Canyon Crest, the number of homes that are selling on an annual basis, compared to the turnover in Orange Crest, which is just the next community over, is hands down, Orange Crest turnover is 6-7 times higher. The house is just turned, okay? More listings, more opportunity, more sales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The turnover in Canyon Crest, it's just not that community. It just doesn't do it. People don't sell. So when I talk about choosing your farm carefully, one of the things I'm talking about is specifically, you've got to do the research. And there are tons and tons of tools out there, whether it's from your title company or internally, or frankly, just your own MLS, where you can go in and you can very, very quickly, well, not quickly, but within an hour or two, you can determine whether this is an area I want to do. Now, you'll see a link here that says CRMLS login here. I'm debating on whether to take the 5 minutes to actually go through and do a quick demo of what I'm talking about. So, meaning, well, let's just do it real quick. If this doesn't work, then we'll exit out of this real quick and we'll jump back into the rest of the presentation. So I was logged in this, the matrix earlier. Of course, it kicked me out. Let's see if it'll let me log back in really fast. Okay, so I'm in. So poor man's way to pick a farm. All right, I am sitting here on the matrix. Which, by the way, Amber, do you want to, can we pull your farm up? Do you mind?
Sure. I'm in Woodcrest.
Okay. Where is it?
I'm in Woodcrest.
Oh, you're in Woodcrest. Okay. So you're farming Woodcrest.
Yeah, just
Okay.
near me in
Okay.
this general area.
Okay. So you chose Woodcrest because you live near Woodcrest, or you live in Woodcrest.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, can I beat you up for a second?
Of course.
The turnover in Orange Crest is larger than the turnover in Woodcrest. All right. It just is. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, so your response back to me is going to be, that's true, Lance, because I did the research, but because the turnover in Orange Crest is so great, there's 10 times more agents working in Orange Crest, which is a true statement. However, there's also very few people that are consistently farming Orange Crest. Okay. So might want to think about that a little bit. So let's just do this really quick. I'm just going to take, and I'm going to skip past a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm just going to do a real quick detail search in MLS. And you want, why don't you just give me an address of something in Woodcrest? You have something handy?
Sure.
Okay.
17350
350.
Owl Tree.
What is it?
Owl Tree.
Owl, OWLTREE.
2 words.
Close enough. We found
There
it.
you go, right there.
Okay, so let's do it, and let's go ahead, and we've got Owl Tree. Let's go to the map. Okay, so we have too many properties over there at Owl Tree because we've gone too big. So let's go ahead and let's zoom in. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Let's zoom in. We're zooming in. We're zooming in. Okay, I may be in the wrong place right now, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so let me zoom out just a little bit. So I'm thinking I want to farm somewhere. Let's just, for argument's sake, say I think I want to farm somewhere in this particular neighborhood. Let me go back to my criteria. By the way, we need to say, well, what are we looking for? Let's see how many active listings there are. Let's go back to my map. Okay, we have 7 active listings. Is that good, bad? I don't know. Maybe 7 is a good number. Maybe it's not. Let's go back and let's set some other criteria. How many properties are active, under contract, and pending? Let's go back to the map. We went from 7 to 13. So we have 6 more properties in this little area that are start. So that the math is kind of simple on that. We had 7 actives and 6 pendings. Let's just say it's a 50-50, right? So basically, things are selling pretty quick. All right. So half of what's got a for sale sign in the yard is in escrow. I like that. I like that. So there's turnover in this area. I like that. All right. Now, for example, if we had searched and there was 15 active or 14 active listings and 1 in escrow, okay, well, that's, it's not quite as much as turnover. So we need to analyze that. That's super, super important. And again, I'm going to just give you the high level stuff. So you guys are going to have to take this a little farther. Let's do the close. The default in the MLS is 6 months. So we went from 13 properties, 7 active, 6 in escrow. How many have closed in the last 6 months? Let's go back to the map. We went to 32. So not bad. Okay. So this particular grid that we just pulled up kind of randomly has some activity. So looking at nothing else, I would say there's some activity in this farm. All right. Now, I can do 45 minutes just on this, which, by the way, if you come to me online, if you're a town and country agent and say, hey, I want to pick a farm, we will spend a minimum of an hour doing what we just spent the last 4 or 5 minutes on. Okay. And you'll sit back and say, this is where I'm going to farm. And I say, well, great. Well, what about this little section over here to the left? And what about this little section over here to the right? And is this area better than that? And we're going to do just a very, very deep dive. And we may just take your farm where you think you want to be, and we might just move it over 1 block. Okay. Might just move it over 1 block, which, by the way, and again, this takes a 1-hour training class into a 4-hour training class. But Amber, for you, let's just for argument's sake say this is your farm. So this circle is your farm. Okay. So you've done well. There's some activity going on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this over here is what I would refer to as your ancillary farm. Okay. You need to have an expectation and a business plan that says, I expect to get listings and do business outside of my farm specifically because of my farm. You're not going to do any advertising over here to the east. You're not going to knock on any doors to the east. You're never going to send a postcard. You're not going to do anything, but your expectation should be you will pick up a listing to the east of your farm if you're farming properly. All right. It happens naturally for a couple of reasons. You're going to be doing open houses at some point when they're allowed. You're going to have signs in the yard. Your people are going to be, but by the way, having a neighborhood that is within your farm that people drive through to get to their neighborhood is key. If you have a farm that's completely isolated and behind gates, and the only people that actually can ever see your for sale sign are the people that live behind the gates in your farm, I would suggest that is a negative. You want to have a farm where people who don't live in your farm are driving through your farm. It doesn't have to be a high traffic area, but they're driving through their farm and they're seeing Amber. Oh my gosh, what's going on with this lady? She's got every listing in this neighborhood. They live in the next neighborhood over. Who they're going to call? They're going to call you. All right. So I'm going to stop here with our little live CRMLS demonstration. But again, you need to spend a lot of time analyzing in CRMLS, in Remine, in whatever program that you guys have access to that helps you determine, is this a good place to farm? A lot of the title companies have turnover rates and all the rest of it, and that's kind of generally what we're speaking of here. All right, so let me get out of this real quick. Let me escape and go back. Okay. All right. So choose carefully, spend a lot of time, question your assumptions. Again, don't just farm in an area because you live, which I did, by the way. I farmed in the neighborhood that I lived in and I killed it. And by the way, I have multiple farms in different locations scattered throughout the city. I have 137 houses over here, 210 houses over to the west, to the south, 92 houses. And in the beginning, it wasn't so strategic. I was a mess. Okay. But once I kind of learned, I had my farms, basically we're talking Moreno Valley. I had my farms scattered in the 4 corners of Moreno Valley. Okay. On purpose. All right. I farmed basically 500 houses, approximately 125 north, south, east, west corners, specifically because I wanted to also get the listings in the middle. But just to have you one example, and I'll share a little bit of my success story with you. One of my farms, the farm that I lived in, 137 houses in Sunnymead Ranch, and 137 houses. I farmed it pretty consistently for about 10 years, and then the REO business came in, the farm died, and I frankly was doing Fannie Mae Freddie Mac business, and I abandoned my farm. Which was successful after 10 years. But of those 137 houses, I sold 87 houses, 87 different houses in 137 house farm in 10 years. And some of those houses I sold 2 and 3 times. A little different market. We're talking late 80s, early 90s. You would go through these 137 houses. There'd be 6, 7, 8, 9 houses. Yes, 7, 8, 9% of the houses would be on the market at any given time. I'd have every single for sale sign. Okay. Every single one. It got to the point where the sellers, even if they didn't like me, they thought I was obnoxious, they were afraid to list with anybody else. You have to list with this person because he owns it. So choose carefully, question your assumptions. And again, I'm going to say this for the same person who said, hey, I farmed for 2 years and I stopped. Whether you've been farming for 2 years or 2 months, you need to take a hard look at your farm, make sure there's the right farm, and also be prepared to abandon it. Be prepared to go somewhere else if you need to. A little easier if you've been doing it for 2 months. Okay, so preparation. Here's a million quotes on how to be prepared. I said be ready to make sure that you're in your farm. So you guys can Google these, and if they're of anything interest to you. Okay, so we've spent, how much time have we spent? What time? Geez, we're 40 minutes in. Okay, you are not allowed to farm. I forbid it. Nobody here can do a farm, whether you're thinking about doing one this afternoon or whether you've been doing one for the last 2 months or 2 years. You cannot farm unless you get yourself a contact management program. If you do not have a contact management program, you are wasting your time. Okay, you must have a contact management program. No CRM, no farming. And as far as I'm concerned, nothing else. And you're not allowed to do anything else in the real estate business until you go out and you get a legitimate contact management program and you use it religiously. Now, I think there's probably a few agents here from Associated Brokerage. I think you guys are still in love with Elevated Network. Elevated Network is a fantastic program. It's not the one that I use, but it's a fantastic program. I will give them a commercial that says, if you do not have a contact management program and you're struggling to find one, Google Elevated Network, buy that program today, then you can start farming this afternoon, okay? Or anything else for that matter. So this is the deal. You have to have a farm because the whole purpose, or Zap, okay, she's using Zap, that's fine. Zap is fine. I don't want to go too deep into Zap because, by the way, I have a slide on Zap here in a minute, which says I want you to use Zap. I'll just really quickly suggest that Zap may not be as strong of a CRM as we might need to do some of the deep farming that I want you guys ultimately to start thinking about doing. But Zap is good, and it sure as heck is better than using nothing. So I love Zap. That's good for you. But we need a place to put these people. So again, Amber, God bless you. I mean, you volunteered in the very beginning, and here I am just going to pick on you for the rest of the day. But for example, when I ask you how many people are on your farm, and you kind of get, it's about 300, okay, I don't want that. I'll give you, let me just jump out of this presentation for just a second. I'm going to share a different screen. Okay, oops, I'm going to try to share a different screen. Okay, so here's my CRM. This is, oops, here is my CRM. You guys can see that. All right, so this is one of my farms. I have multiple farms. Look down to the lower right-hand corner, lower left-hand corner where my mouse is circling. This farm has 1,651 people in it. 1,651 people. Now, the reality is, if you had asked me, how many people are in your, by the way, this is my training class farm. How many people are in your training class farm? The reality is I probably wouldn't have said 1,651. I probably would have said there's about 1,600 people because it changes. Sometimes people get thrown out on my farm. In this particular case, I want to add people to my farm. But this is a farm. These people, some of you, by the way, might be on this list. If you've ever gotten an email from me, you're in my training class farm. A kind of a spam email. I apologize. Because then if you've ever gotten a text from me, a Linktree text, you're in this farm. You're one of these 1,651 people. Okay. Now, what am I doing now? Again, don't take this wrong. So especially the Coldwell Banker brokers, I have no intention of recruiting. We don't do that. We don't recruit blue on blue. When we're for geographically, for the most part, we're in different areas. But everybody else, which by the way, if you look closely, Alta Realty Group, Keller Williams and Redlands, Keller Williams and Redlands, Berkshire Hathaway and Moreno Valley, Regency Real Estate. What am I doing here, guys? Anybody? What am I doing? I'm recruiting. This is a farm of recruits. I have a consistent plan for this particular farm. They get a phone call. I'm not knocking on their door, obviously, but if they get a phone call from me, they get an email from me, they get something from me, I'm touching them, I'm farming them. So a little different type of farm than what we were just talking about a minute ago, but it's generally the same thing. So let me go back, share my presentation again. There you are, come back up. And okay, so you have to have a CRM. Anybody who's been farming for any period of time that can't, on their phone, by the way, your CRM has to be available on your phone, okay? I have to be in my farm. I have to be able to pull out Nick's name, his phone number, everything about him, when he bought the house, how many bedrooms, how many square feet, his loan amount, anything that I can potentially know about Nick, I need to know. And if I happen to talk to him, which by the way, you guys, let me segue a little bit. I'm going to role play with myself a little bit. Okay, so Nick's in my farm. I knock on his door the first time, or I call him. What's going to happen to me the first time I call Nick, or the first time I knock on his door? Nick's going to be rude as hell. I'm not interested. Why are you knocking on my door? It's COVID. Are you an idiot? You're not even wearing a mask. What's wrong with you? Get out of here. Or I'm going to call, which by the way, is it me or are the number of spam calls just accelerating off the charts? Okay. I got to tell you, calling people is extremely problematic. Okay. Because there are so many unsolicited calls coming into our phone. It's just a problem. But let me go back to my quick little example with Nick. I call him, I email him. The first time I don't get much love. Okay. That's okay. But by the way, I want to document that. I want to document. Nick told me to he's busy now. And he seemed irritated when I knocked on his door. I make a note. Nick was irritated. I'm going to come back again. Now, I'm not going to get this deep. Is my plan to knock on Nick's door every 30 days, every 60 days, every 3 months, send him a letter every 30 days, every 60 days, every 3, whatever the plan and the timeline is. The next time I reach out to Nick, I may get the exact same reaction. The third time, I might get the same reaction. Generally speaking, though, after the second, third, fourth time, Nick's reaction to me will be different, even if he told me to F off the first time I knocked on his door. And this is the absolute truth. So if somebody tells you to screw off on the phone or whatever it happens, I've sent people a letter. I've had them write on my letter. Who takes the time to do this? Write on the letter, screw you, how dare you, don't ever send me ever a letter again, and they mail it back to me. You have to make a decision. Are you going to mail them again or not? I generally do. And I have had people like that after 3, 4, 5, 6 communications, all of that is forgotten and I am their best friend. And by the way, the whole attitude changes very, very quickly with Nick once I list his neighbor's house. Once I list Nick's neighbor's house, oh, and by the way, once I sell it, and then I list the other neighbor's house, the next time Nick gets a call from me, it's going to be different. Okay. Which, by the way, the traditional sales call, stop. Hey, Nick, this is Lance at Coldwell Banker Town and Country. How's it going there, buddy? Just thought I'd give you a call. You know anybody who might want to buy or sell real estate? Come on, guys, we're better than that. That's not professional. It's embarrassing. If I'm going to, and I'm going to continue to say call, it doesn't have to be a call. If I'm going to continue to call Nick, email Nick, text Nick, write him direct letters, knock on his door, I have to provide information that is going to be value to him. Hey, Nick, I just want to let you know I just listed your neighbor's house on 123 Main Street. It's the exact same floor plan as your condo. And I just thought you might be interested to know we just listed it for $610,000. Thank you very much. Click, or if you need more information, period, stop. Let them know what's going on. And by the way,
Are they doing like really boring shit, but homework wise? You know,
hold on a minute. I lied. A minute ago, I said I was going to be monitoring the chat or the voice, and I didn't. Okay, so did somebody accidentally unmute themselves?
I
Okay,
got
that
it.
was-
I got it, Lance.
Okay, but look at that. Okay, that was an
Yeah.
accident. I hadn't been, by the way, if you've been unmuted trying to talk to me, I apologize because I closed the participant window and I forgot to look at it. So we have to give them some value and we have to document it. So getting back to Nick as my example, every time I talk to him, I need to document it. Every response he gives me, I have to document it. When I get positive feedback, I document it. If Nick says, hey, I'm going out to my kid's football game on Saturday. Now, this is where it gets weird. Be careful. Don't be a creeper. All right. But I document that. So if Nick tells me some personal information, his brother's name, his birthday, I'm going to Tennessee to visit my family for the holiday or whatever. Now, again, you got to be careful with this, but under the appropriate circumstances, the next time I talk to Nick, hey, Nick, last time I talked to you, you were going to Tennessee and you were going to your brother's birthday. And, how was the trip? But it also has to be genuine, guys. It has to be genuine. So don't force that or you're going to run into some big trouble. Okay, so I'm farming. You need a place for your people, critical, okay? Everything we do, how you spend your time matters. Everything gets scheduled. Everything, oops, sorry about that. Everything gets scheduled. So if I have a farm, I know what I'm doing today, tomorrow, next week, next month, at least for 12 months out. At least, okay? So everything gets scheduled in your farm, whatever you plan on doing. Now, this doesn't just apply for farming. This applies for the real estate business in general. If any of you woke up today and you had no idea what your real estate day looked like, that's a problem. That's a problem, especially in the era of COVID. Oh, I think I'll check my email. I know I have a Zoom call, and then maybe have another. And by the way, I hate to say this, but there's probably a few of you that are on this call right now because you have nothing better to do. You're not here because you're looking for farming. You're here because you have nothing to do. And the reason you have nothing to do because you haven't scheduled anything. All right. So when I look at this, I don't know whether 38 as attendance is good. I've jumped in and out of these. I see somewhere between 40 and 60 people on average. So I guess I could take offense. But let's face it, if we put all of our offices together, there should be 600-700 people on this call. Okay. I don't look at that as a negative. I sit back and say, okay, well, 650 people had a plan today. And that plan today didn't include this. They're out selling real estate. They're working their farm, which, by the way, if your farm says I farm on Wednesdays from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, then guess what you don't do on Wednesdays? You don't attend any Zoom training classes, right? You don't. You are if your farm says and your schedule is this is what I do on Wednesdays, you don't do it. I mean, how come I'm sorry, man. I farm Wednesdays at noon. I've been doing it for 5 years. That's what I do. So at any rate, by the way, if you have too many of those days, it's bad for your farm. It's also bad for your real estate career because it's just a bad thing. Okay, let me get off the CRM bandwagon here for a minute. Keys to your success are you're going to follow the plan. Oh, by the way, the whole concept of farming is very simple, guys. We go out and we plow the land and we remove the rocks and we fertilize it and we put some seeds down and we water it and it takes time, right? And then over a period of time, crops grow up and then we harvest the crops and we get to eat. It's the same thing with your residential farm. If you put in the work, your farm will produce for you. Escrows, closed transactions, future clients. If you don't, it won't. You must be consistent though. It is absolutely critical. Okay, Yogi Berra, cute little quote. You don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. So we're going to do a little bit of planning here. So let me share something with you. 2019, who has seen this? Someone wave at me or someone if you're familiar with the NAR profile of buyers and sellers. Can I get any sort of feedback that says, yes, you're familiar with this? Okay, so I'm going to assume, since nobody is giving me any feedback here, I'm going to assume that none of you guys have ever heard about this. Okay. National Association of Realtors, to be honest with you, most of us pay no attention. Okay. Frankly, most of us pay no attention with maybe the exception of people like me or Vicky Carpenter or a few others. We don't really pay a whole heck of a lot of attention to what our organized real estate does, whether it's NAR, CAR, or the local association. There are a couple of fantastic things that NAR does. This is one of them. Okay. 2019, which by the way, this is the most current one. Next year, they'll come out with a 2020 profile on buyers and sellers. Here's a link to it. I'm going to click on it real fast. This is a hot link. Everybody here needs to go and study this profile. It's 166 pages. This is a profile that NAR puts out I'm obviously not going to spend time to go through it. Let me just see if I can just randomly land on something that has some value. Okay, some highlights. First time buyer characteristics. Typical buyer is 47 years old. Actually, since we're talking more about sellers, well, I don't want to go find the time to find the seller stuff. It has the same type of information about sellers though. It talks about how long the average seller is holding onto their houses these days. It talks about why sellers are moving. It talks about why sellers are looking for prices. It talks about why